Welcome to our compliance conversations hosted by Insurance Licensing Services of America, tongue-tied, and ILSA. Today we'll be covering cybersecurity, part 3.
Woohoo! Thank you guys for joining us. This is going to be a 1-hour session. We're streaming on a bunch of places. I think LinkedIn, Facebook, Periscope, and some other places that I don't even know about. YouTube. Okay, YouTube. Got to give a shout out
Christian,
to YouTube.
can we stream on Twitter as well?
We are in Periscope.
Look at that.
Wow, I don't even know what Oh, I shouldn't say that.
Periscope up.
But we're there, so we're in a bunch of platforms. If you guys have any questions during the session, please type those in our Q&A section.
Today, our lineup of experts are Joanne Delgado, regulator from the Surplus Science Association of California. Welcome. Paul Feather, he's a CISO at Renaissance Systems. Fred Karlinski, co-chair, Insurance Regulatory and Transactions Practice at Greenberg Traurig. We've got Dennis Logan, broker at Professional Risk Solutions in the house. And from ILSA, we got Elaine Nance, marketing specialist and resident expert on insurance department filing requirements. And our GM, Russ Foster, former IT manager.
And fielding all the questions that were previously sent in to ccquestions@ilsainc.com is our live chat manager, which is Sabrina Slater. And she also happens to be our annuals and corporates manager. So I'm going to share a secret with all of you guys. If you happen to have any questions pertaining to Department of Revenue or Secretary of State filings, you can put those in the chat or email them to her at ccquestions@ilsainc.com. And just before we get everything going, I want Russ, if you will just take a few minutes to just share our ILSA newsroom, because that's a valuable resource where we have all of our bulletins. A lot of them have to do with the extensions that have been granted because of COVID-19, but let's go ahead and show those resources.
And one of the things I'm looking forward to the most is some of those horror stories and that I know you guys are itching to tell us about, and I'm quite interested to hearing. So I would kind of like just to do like a little round robin. So we'll start with Russ Foster.
Oh, you're going to put me out there first, huh?
I am. I have no shame in throwing you under the bus.
All right. Tales from the dark side. Man, we've been doing this for ILSA for coming up on 20 years now. And we've had every example that you can give for cybersecurity incidents. And thank goodness, most of them are old. They happened a long time ago. We figured out we had vulnerabilities and we improved them. I'm going to steal a march on some of the stuff that we're actually going to be talking about later. I'm going to share my screen again, Ted.
Right.
This is an email that we got today.
Oh, I got that too.
Yeah. So you should be seeing an email. This is to our ops folks. And of course, at the top, you can see not Russ. So this is from one of our employees who got this email, and we got a bunch of them that got it today.
Yep.
Every single one of them forwarded it to ops. And the reason that they did that, Ted, Arleen, can you see what the subject is, the actual email, the original one?
The subject is, are you available?
Yep. And then it says, I need you to get a purchase done as I'm planning to surprise some staff with a gift amidst these pandemic. And let this remain between you and me. Acknowledge back once you get this. Oh, wait, your response. Thanks, Russ Foster. And then what's the tell?
Well, we definitely know that it wouldn't be coming from your mobile device.
There you go. So I had to share that with you guys. So the attempts continue, but we're going to talk about some of the best practices, and education obviously is one of them. If your staff can look at that and know that's fake, then you're doing a good job of keeping your people educated. But that's because we've learned the hard way. We've had some incidents. We've had viruses. Probably the most memorable one that we got was back in 2014. It was an endovirus, W32 endovirus. And we had to go machine to machine. We were here all night long. All the IT people were here going from machine to machine to eradicate this virus. Big pain in the rear. We had an antivirus program, but antivirus programs are reactive. And this was released worldwide. In fact, it's still kind of around. And it did a lot of damage, and it took a while before they got an update to the antivirus programs to deal with it. So, but they did come up with a removal tool, and so we were able to manually get rid of that. So that one was a fun one.
Russ, we just got one yesterday on USPS, United States Postal Service.
Oh, yeah.
Saying that it was sent out on March 23rd. This is your final notice. Click here because this package that you have.
Oh yeah.
It's like,
and that's the method. They want you to click on something, and that social engineering is going to kick in. They're going to try to find a way to make it attractive for you to click whatever that button is. So, and we paid the price for that a couple of times.
Yeah.
But probably, like I said, the antivirus. Now we got CryptoLocker in 2014. Also, we had one employee that clicked on the button, and almost immediately she was isolated from the network. I mean, it was really, really fast. So she lost some pictures of her family that she had on her computer, and she lost some files that were local to her machine. But it didn't make it to the network. We didn't have any problems at all. We didn't pay the ransom, so that worked out really good. But those are the cyber stories. Now we're going to talk more about how social engineering works and what your vulnerabilities are. But the classic vulnerability of any system, once you've hardened it, is what's already inside. We had an employee that tried to steal one of our clients' identities. You guys will remember that one, Ted and Arleen. It was very clumsy. That was 15 years ago. Can you believe that? We had a client who had access to, or an employee rather, that had access to some of our client information. She decided, she found a client whose name was very similar to hers. And so she decided, Christmas is coming. I'm going to take out a credit card in this woman's name, and I'm going to go buy presents, and then I'll pay it off and I'll cancel it out. Nobody will ever be the wiser. And of course, 15 minutes after she got that credit card, they knew exactly who she was and where she was. And we called her in and asked her questions, and she promptly ran out the door, and we were done with her. But
she was arrested.
Yep. So the end of the day, we've had some, just a little bit of everything that can happen to you. But we've done very well in taking care of those. Unfortunately, oftentimes you have to fix things after they break. That's the hard part of any kind of hacking event. From our very first Zoom webinar, we've had to fix things after they break. So,
yeah.
Well, Russ, why don't you kind of tell us, in the one of the main things that we love to say around here is, DDT, don't do that. What are your top 3 must-dos and or don'ts for cybersecurity?
Well, I tell you, my one of my number one, I guess, do's and not don'ts is the Warren Buffett rule of data. You know what? You know the Warren Buffett first rule Warren Buffett has, right, Ted?
Yeah, never
don't lose money. Yeah, our number 1 rule of data is don't lose data. It'll cost you some money if you do, and that's, you don't want to lose it to hardware issues. You don't want to lose it to a hacker. You don't want to lose it in any kind of way. So you have to do what you can do to protect the data. What else?
Educate and communicate.
Educate. Yep, communicate. So we've already covered that one. If your employees know what they're supposed to do every single time, and the opposite of that, of course, they know what they're not supposed to do. They're not supposed to click on that stuff. They're not supposed to just unquestioningly deal with these emails. And one of the things I'm sure Paul and Dennis and Fred can attest to, cyber phishing gets more eloquent and more realistic all the time. They actually watch the stuff that we send. They see what we do. They go to our website, figure out who we are. And so lately we've gotten some phishing emails that seem to be from a client, or may actually be, they may actually use the client's information in the email. They talk about things like taxes and filings and applications and things that we do. And so it's very seductive. It's very easy to see that and think, oh my goodness, I got to take care of this. So you've got to make sure you educate your people, let them know what to look for to validate those. And some of them are very realistic. And then this is one I had to learn the hard way. It's Ted will attest. Spend the money. I am cheap. I am so cheap. I squeak when I walk. I'm so tight. I squeak when I walk. So it's not a luxury. And a lot of companies will look at IT as an expense. It's not an investment. It's not bringing anything back to me. It's not one of my production departments. So there's no sales. There's no revenue coming from IT. So, why do I have to spend all this money on all this stuff until you finally get hacked? Just ask Sony about how much money you should be spending on your IT department. They got hacked a number of years ago. They lost 12 movies that had not been released yet. And they lost the personal information of a bunch of their stars. It was the Sony Entertainment Department. And Sony's lost client information too from PlayStation hack. So all of those things cost you tons of money that you could have spent a fraction of to protect yourself from those expenses. So you've got to be forward looking. You got to be willing to spend the money. So those are my do's and don'ts.
Awesome. Well, do you have any kind of recommendations or resources that you use to create or maintain a cybersecurity program?
Oh man, there's tons of them. You're gonna laugh. YouTube. Seriously, there's tons of people that want to share their information. Now you get what you pay for, and there are idiots out there on YouTube who will put stuff up that you should not be doing. But that's one. Another shameless plug. Paul, their company is, especially in our industry, if you've got somebody who is good on cybersecurity, that's great. Depending on what business you're in, they should be able to hook you up. But if you got somebody who's good on cybersecurity and knows your industry and knows what to look for to make you compliant in what you do every day, or what the requirements are now, like with New York, all the things that are coming down the road, you got to seek somebody out who is really going to be able to help your situation, understand your situation, and help you deal with the threats that are unique to your business and your industry. And really and truly, there's folks out there that would look at RSI or some other resource, like, well, I can't afford that. That's so much money. Like I said, spend the money. But for the folks that really truly are having trouble finding stuff that's within their price range, there's tons of free stuff. There's pay sites too where you can go and learn. Online courses like Pluralsight, NextGenT, those are really, really good places to go and learn about what you should be doing. But and I got to brag on NextGenT because they're run by ex-Air Force guys, so go Air Force. But even the Department of Homeland Security offers free cybersecurity courses. So there's stuff out there that's good, and you can trust. I mean, you can't trust DHS. Who can you trust, right? So go someplace that's trustworthy. You don't want to just go to any particular site that says, yeah, we'll protect you. But find some sources that you trust and learn all you can. You can't learn enough because everything changes every day.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for all that feedback. So let's kind of switch gears and head towards Miss Elaine. Elaine, do you have some weird or horrible story about cybersecurity you'd like to share with us?
Well, I had my first story that came to mind was one very similar to Russ had, but since he sort of covered that, like so many people who were hands-on IT at the time, way back now, set the machine, New Year's Eve, 1999, getting ready to have a brand new millennia. And where was I? Sitting in the dark in a server room, trying to get one more great backup of our data, because of course the big thing there was Y2K. And I'm sure there are people listening here who weren't even alive when Y2K was an issue. But we really were concerned that it was going to cause glitches, and people had spent years rewriting software, trying to prepare for this event. But we all made that last backup anyway. And the next day, everybody said, oh, well, nothing happened. You know, it was obviously a fake. And it's like, no, nothing happened because IT professionals spent 4 years preparing for this event. And so a lot of times people see, you know, Rez was talking about spending the money, and they go, well, you know, nothing happens. So what are we spending all this money for? And it's like, you're spending money so nothing happens. Nothing happening is great in IT. So
That's a good thing.
We want smooth, we want it to not be noticeable, because the time you notice IT is when something breaks.
Absolutely.
Though I do tell, again, my little story that I had about that. One of the things I still tell people, I spent 3 days scrubbing computers from a virus. And I always tell people, you want to know what a data breach is going to cost you, you know, really in a visceral way, tell your team to turn off their computers for 3 days. And see how much you get done.
Your teen, I have a 4-year-old.
Well, team, I mean, the people at work, you know, people in the office.
Tell your
You
department.
could not turn your computers on for 3 days. How would that interrupt what you do?
Yeah, true.
I'm getting twitches just from hearing
Just
that.
thinking about that.
Don't actually tell your team that, okay?
All right, Elaine, I know you've done extensive research on cybersecurity. What are your 3 must-dos for cybersecurity?
Well, again, sort of picking up that idea of training. But one thing I'll sort of add to what Russ said about that is train, don't shame people. As with anything, if you tell people, if you embarrass people, or if you hold them up as a bad example in a team meeting, for example, if somebody clicks on a bad link, that sort of, you know, reproach is going to make people hide mistakes. It's not going to encourage them to come forward and say. If you want to do that, positive reinforcement is the way to go. When you have somebody who reports an email that they find suspicious, and it does turn out to be something, you know, send out something to your entire team and say, you know, Susie opened this email, she thought it was suspicious, she reported it, she did everything right, you know, congratulations, you know, follow her example. And, you know, you always just want to be constantly positively reinforcing that for people so that they will feel comfortable coming with questions. It's part of that creating a culture of compliance for your business. The other thing is, of course, get C-suite buy-in, because this is not something that just the IT department handles. It really does need to go from the boardroom to the frontline employees. Everybody is part of keeping your data safe. And then my third one, I guess, is learn the language. You know, every profession has its own jargon. And even if you're not an IT professional, learn some basic terms. One, it's going to help you, even if you're outsourcing a lot of these compliance tasks, you want to be able to understand what those professionals are telling you. If you've got to explain a problem, you want to be able to use, you know, it's not just, there's this little doohickey over in the corner and it's flashing at me. You know, you want to be able to use the right language so that you're communicating effectively.
Why are you calling me out?
I'm not calling you out. But one thing, little, again, shameless promoing, ILSA is actually getting ready to launch a new video series called Cyber Minute. This is going to be just little 1-minute videos explaining some key cybersecurity and technology terms. And so everybody, you know, go to our YouTube channel and subscribe, and those should be coming out shortly.
Awesome.
And they're very good. Elaine's done a really good job on those.
Yeah, I can't wait to see those, Elaine. Thank you. So can you kind of share some of your resources that you use?
Sure. A lot of mine, of course, because, you know, I'm not a hands-on IT professional anymore, really are about training and learning resources. And one of the ones that I have just really enjoyed is a company called Habituate. That's Habitu and the number 8. They do training videos. But what I love is they do not do the same old boring training videos. Their training videos are hilarious. They are extremely engaging. They have some that are available on their website for free, others that you can, you know, purchase. And it's a way to keep people's interest and to get them involved and excited about doing this. You know, laughter is a wonderful way to teach. The other thing, a source that I've gotten a lot of good information on is dark reading. That's darkreading.com on the website. They have articles. They've had some great virtual conferences that you can go to, lots of webinars, and they just are a really great source of information. And it is geared more to that sort of general audience in a way. There's some that's very technical, but there's also a lot of sort of good general content out there that anybody who's interested in the subject can read and learn. And then the last one is another training company, NoB4. 4 is with a number. And they also, again, have a lot of great tools online. Again, many of those are free. And then, you know, if you want to move on from there, you can pay for, you know, services. But they are cybersecurity and information sciences training.
Yeah, those sound like amazing tools. I actually posted each of the links that you supplied to me previously in the chat room. So if you guys want to check those out, please feel free to do so. I've listed them there for your convenience. Okay, so let's move right along to Dennis. Tag, you're it. Why don't you start off with some of those wild and crazy stories?
Where do you want me to start? So I guess the one that gave me like the heebie-jeebies the most, I guess, was I had ensured that they clicked on a bad email, clicked on the attachment, got locked out of their system, and were basically corresponding. They could only use email, and basically the hackers demanded a ransom, and they said they couldn't pay it, and were trying to negotiate it, and the hacker replied with the insured's cyber policy saying, no, you have X limits, you're going to pay us now, or we're going to increase the ransom. And so more than just the heebie-jeebies of them having that much control, it was more so that means that they were in their system and either just watching their policies come through or could be doing more. So it's when you have a situation like that, the ransom is probably the smallest amount, which it was well over 6 figures. And you know, the cost of figuring out how long they've been in the system, you know, remediating that system, hiring Paul, hiring Russ, essentially for, I'm assuming it probably was at least a month to 2 month job, you know, of trying to just figure out how bad they've been attacked and then recreating that data. And that's, again, where all cyber insurance policy can pay for all of that. But it's just, I guess that would probably be the most heebie-jeebie ones that I've seen so far.
That's crazy.
Yes. Alrighty. So Dennis, can you share your 3 must-dos for cybersecurity?
Sure. So again, it's all about human error. Again, 95%, no, not 95%, but it's a big chunk of the reason why cyber attacks occur. So really hesitate anytime before you open any attachments. That's the biggest thing. I mean, even when I'm corresponding with Arleen and Ted, like if there's an attachment, I'm going to reread the email at least 3 times, read the actual email body, make sure there's not some weird typos, and then hover over the attachment. Then I usually preview the attachment, and then I might actually double click on it to actually start looking at it. So you can't be too precautious. Like I said, double check the sender's email, and then don't use the same password across different platforms, especially. So Instagram was hacked, it was about 2 weeks ago, and about 275 million accounts and passwords exposed, essentially. So if you're using, again, these hackers are not from the 90s where they're just guessing or just sending out random emails. This is very calculated, at least with the software anyways. You know, the actual hacker might be a little bit, you know, dashed, but, you know, besides that, the software is looking for information online to pinpoint ways to guess your password the fastest. So if your work computer password is dog 2020 and your Instagram password is puppy 2020, it's not going to take that long for them to figure out the difference between those two. So try to make it at least as complicated, or if I don't personally recommend any password protection softwares because I can't recommend that because if things go bad, I don't want to be on the side of that. But I do recommend looking into it because they do provide long, really complex passwords for you and then keep them stored for you in a way. I still suggest trying to duplicate that information some possible way because I don't think anything is really, you know, rock hard safe. So that'd be my 3 pros to do.
The thing is, the thing that's having the biggest impact on all of this is then the AI.
Absolutely.
Because that machine learning, they're able to utilize it to come up with all these ways of getting to you.
Well, and to your point, more than anything, I think you guys can Google yourselves. Every week there's been a new ransomware cyber attack. That money goes somewhere, and a lot of that is R&D. So they're looking to reinvest in that attack software that, Russ said the software that attacked them back in, the 90s or early thousands could still be around. It most likely is, and probably is on, version 12.0, trying to figure out how to be the smartest attack and more so more efficient, because they're not looking to really hurt or not to say hurt, to really break down or bankrupt a company. They're looking to get a return fish.
Yep.
They're trying to make sure that it's a appropriate amount so they can come back next year or in 6 months. So that's where you have to make sure that you do the proper security standards after an attack has occurred. Excuse me.
We actually have our first question, and Dennis, you kind of touched on it a little bit, so I'm going to throw it out to you first, and then, but if any of you guys want to tag on to it, please feel free to. Larry had a great question. He said, what do you do about phishing now where the spelling is pristine and the images seem legit? When the spelling and grammar is off, that is one thing, but they're getting so much better at this. And I've been saying this to Russ the last couple of weeks. It just seems like some of them are really spot on. If you start out with, hey, Slater, okay, yeah, that's a red flag. But if they're looking really professional now, what do you do?
I mean, and I do work on the insurance side, so it was my first go-to, but I mean, frankly, I think it's just a matter of having a good insurance policy, because it's really not a question of if, it's really when. Like you said, they're only getting smarter, and it's only going to get harder, and we're only going to be more normalized to this environment where we're going to start clicking on emails quicker, and it's just going to happen, especially with whether new employees, training new employees remotely. I mean, just the remote environment by itself just allows for relaxation. So I mean, I don't know. To answer your question, Larry, directly, I mean, there's not really a solution to everything seeming legit, and that's where, I mean, your cyber policy is going to look to make sure that everything from a regulatory perspective is covered. So that way, because it is still an error, even though it is extreme phishing, I guess you could say, it's something that's part of the policy now. It's part of the status quo. Just like opening, a grocery store, you have to bank on someone slipping and falling by the ice section. It's you can mop up as much as you want, but one ice cube and you're done.
Well, and to that point, if I may, to Dennis's point now, which I agree with completely, and I've said many times and almost always say in a cyber present, is it's not a question of if, question of when. But let me also say, and this is another comment I say all the time, if you fail to prepare, prepare to fail. I know I've said that on prior webinars I've done with you all. And a couple things I would mention, when Russ put up the email this morning, one thing that was glaring to me that I want you guys to do immediately, because it'll help you, is have that notice on your emails when it's coming from an external source. While that doesn't fully obviate all the problems, it does do a lot to understand when something's coming externally versus internally. I know that phishing is getting a lot more sophisticated. I know a lot of the typos that were there before and syntax errors they're trying to clean up. But I think even before you get to your insurance policy, your biggest insurance policy, look, we all know that the biggest, weakest link that we have here is the human equation, right? It's either someone doing something wrong or someone not doing something right. And I think at the end of the day, training is probably the most important thing we can and need to continue to do, because these systems are not infallible. Again, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. And I think one of the things that mitigates, and if you look at any of the model acts, if the New York reg, if you look at some of the other things out there, training and preparation go a long way in mitigating any regulatory blowback. And in fact, we don't have a lot of case law on these these breaches. But if we did, I would submit to you, or when we do, I would submit to you that mitigation is going to go a very long way. And so I would urge everyone, I think cyber insurance is critical, but I do think that that preparation and the training and understanding good cyber hygiene, all very important. To the point that Ted made earlier about the text that he was getting from the USPS, I got 2 of those this morning, so I know exactly what you're talking about. The other thing that's going on that everyone needs to be very cognizant of, and I know you are the spoof phone calls now, where you see a number coming in that's either a recognizable number or in fact someone's number that you know with their caller ID moniker on there telling you to do something and you don't know if it's real or not. And so those types of things are all things we need to train our folks on. I also want to say, and I probably should have started with this, you know, I applaud you all for putting these on. I think, number one, the format's a lot less stiff than what I'm mostly used to, so I appreciate that just generally. But I would also say just getting everyone on the same page and having people understand that what you're seeing is not unique to you. Everyone else is seeing it, and the best thing we can do is to try and promote a discussion, a vibrant discussion about these issues, because we'll all become more educated by virtue of that. So I applaud ILSA and Ted and Arleen and the whole team for doing that.
One of the things that stood out from what you said was that just kept coming back to me was prevention is the best medicine. So that's really, that applies to the medical side, but on our side, it's the same thing. Do your best to try to keep this from happening, and you'll be so much better off.
Yeah, and one of the things that Elaine said that I really loved was, you know, just to make sure that you are just treating that employee that does cause the breach in a respectful way, and just understand that errors do happen. It could have been something else that they might have had an error with, or another employee that could have had an error with something, but you definitely want to have an environment where people bring those issues up, that they're not hiding it, because to hide something like that is just devastating.
Well, I'll give you a good, and again, I think the comment I make, fail to prepare, prepare to fail, is really important in the cyber world. But just the last several weekends, there's a restaurant I go to often with my family on the weekends. And 3 weekends ago, I get a call on my cell phone. It's my help desk saying, hey, are you on your phone? Are you on a strange Wi-Fi? And I didn't connect to Wi-Fi, but as we all know, we all have Wi-Fi on all the time, right? And if you're in an area that you've connected to, it connects automatically. Well, I didn't connect to anything, but apparently there was a strange Wi-Fi that our system, and our system is a great system, and with 4,600, 4,700 employees worldwide, you've got to have a good system. We've been lauded for our system. Having said that, again, it's not a question of if, but it's a question when. But they actually, in the time they figured out that there was something possibly wrong with my phone, they wiped out my entire Outlook for the office. And they were actually apologizing for it. And I said, guys, I'm actually thrilled that you did that. Because, and again, these are, you know, folks that theoretically, not theoretically, but they work for me. I'm one of the owners of the firm, and they felt bad about it. And I said, guys, I'm, you know, in the world I live in, what you just did, if you thought there was a problem, is the smartest thing you can do. Fast forward to this weekend, I was in the same location. I forgot to turn off Wi-Fi. I got the call and I said, I know exactly what's going on. Again, they took the system down, brought it back up about 10 minutes later, and again, apologized. And I said, guys, I owe you an apology. I should have realized, turn off Wi-Fi when you're in this spot. There's something strange you see that you don't like. Those are the kind of things that people shouldn't be chastised for. They should be lauded for doing that, because if there was a problem, they basically averted it almost real time.
Wow, that's really interesting. So Fred, is that like part of your company's protocol, like that you guys turn off Wi-Fi when you're out in different places?
You know, it's not, and it should be, frankly. I think what you find is, normally speaking, You obviously have to click on a Wi-Fi to accept it.
Yeah.
This was a very weird scenario. They had not seen this before, but the protocol, more importantly, Arleen, the protocol is they're watching everything we're doing on these devices because, again, the weakest link is human error. And while I don't think I made an error there, my device was set up in such a way where it showed them that I could have made an error. Again, someone who knows this very well. I know not to get on public Wi-Fis. I don't get on public Wi-Fis. But just having those types of things, again, that preparation, and to the point that Elaine made earlier, which is you don't want to shame these folks. I mean, again, they felt sort of bad. They thought they were inconveniencing me. And frankly, having your system taken down is an inconvenience, but it's a far less inconvenient matter to have the system taken down versus to have all your data compromised.
Yeah.
Does VPN help in this case when you're out there, guys?
Yes, I'll verify on that. Yes.
Okay.
So
Good.
if you're using a VPN for all communications from your device to any site or to any back-end office, it prevents that man-in-the-middle attack is what he's describing.
Right.
Where they'll put up an actual Wi-Fi hotspot with a name that is consistently used throughout the entire area, like Time Warner Cable or AT&T or some other, everybody knows the name, so everybody connects to it. Well, that traffic that traverses through that wireless access point, all that traffic is captured and utilized against us. And so it is very easy, and I've seen it happen a million times, and it's very easy to set up. So when you use a VPN, the device itself, from the device all the way through the entire channel to wherever it's going, is encrypted. So it cannot be sniffed, it can't be used, it can't be utilized, and it truly prevents this kind of what we call packet capture.
Right.
And it happens. I mean, I see any of your, if you log into Google, or if you're logging into Facebook, or logging into a website, back-end office intranet, or email servers that aren't encrypted. So there's a lot of data that flows through these devices, these cell phones that we use, and that traverses a lot of different places. And without a VPN, it's wide open.
Well, I use VPN on my phone or on my computer whenever I go out of Puerto Rico. Here, I don't use it as much, but whenever I go either to the United States or internationally, immediately everything goes through that VPN to protect.
I do too, and that's interesting, Paul, because I'm always on that, and it still caught me in the man in the middle. So I'm not sure how that worked.
Well, it actually captured your traffic, but it was encrypted. So what happens is that access point was flagged by the back-end MDM, the mobile device management system. It's happened to me. That wipe just comes, and you don't have a choice. You just literally blank, your phone quits. So it's designed to know the access points that you're connecting to, where they're coming from, and how that traffic traverses from that access point to its other locations, out to the internet, or did it go through some other back, Ukrainian website? I don't know where it went, but they can tell by the traffic of where that traversed, and they knew that it was a bad access point.
Yeah, like I said, I was thrilled. I mean, they felt bad for me, and I said, guys, you did exactly what the system did. The system operated exactly as we would want to, because I don't care who you are, those things are going to happen.
Yeah.
Okay, so the blonde might be coming through quite a bit here, but you're going to have to break down what is a VPN.
Virtual private network.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
So it's a private connection that's connected between your device, your MAC address, your whatever your wireless or wired, to a server somewhere that allows you to be encrypted. That entire length of that communications channel is encrypted. Okay. And when the hackers look at it, it just looks like garbled text. You can't see anything. You can't see the data or the packets or passwords or any of that kind of thing. So very important.
I've even used it while we were traveling in China.
Yeah, we
and
definitely
it worked very
used
well.
it there.
Some countries, like China, some countries will not allow you to do that because
like
they
it.
want to watch your packets.
Yeah.
They want to know what's in the packets.
That's why we put it on there.
Yeah. And
And if
that's
you buy a
another good,
VPN, don't buy it in China.
yeah, don't buy a VPN in China. It doesn't work. And the other thing
It's
is
already compromised if it's in there. If it's
I would not buy or I would not take a laptop, a corporate laptop with you to China or
That's
a
the
personal
other thing
laptop.
we did. Yes, we made sure we didn't do that.
I would just buy a laptop, burner, whatever, tablet, whatever, and just leave it. You know, leave it at the airport in China. Let somebody else have it.
Yeah.
Not worth bringing back.
Pretty smart plan.
Well, hey, we're kind of segue right into you, Paul. Can you kind of tell us some of your top must-dos for cybersecurity to promote good cyber hygiene?
I think one of the biggest concerns that we've seen recently is the lack of understanding of where my data is. So companies really have no clue what it takes to run their business, the data. And then if you can't understand where it is or what it is, how can you protect it? So we were all talking about spending dollars to protect something, but if you don't know what that is, it's near impossible to protect it. So like in this case of Fred with the laptop or phone, if that data, we didn't know that there was data on his phone, there would be, it'd be very hard to protect it. So they spent some money on an MDM solution to protect that device and to protect a laptop or whatever. So truly knowing where your data is, we have some really strong, that's one of the tools that I was going to mention, very strong tools for doing data analysis at rest and transmission across your internal network. Gives you great understanding of where the data traverses, what the data elements are made up. If you have, it could be part numbers or insurance claims numbers or PII from your customers, policy numbers. Those are the kind of data elements that I'm talking about. Could, provide that information to a threat, and it could be disastrous for your company. So you want to know where those data elements are and to use a tool that gives you the details behind the data so that you can protect it. So that's one of my top 3 must-dos, is to know where my data is and who has access to my data, no matter what those data elements are. It could be as simple as just email and a file server, but normally companies are a little more sophisticated than that, and they have a lot of back-end processes that traverse their network, traverse externally to other vendors or providers, and then being able to know where that data is very important. So that's the top one. The other piece that a lot of companies, just from hardware and software inventories, they don't know what actually is on the wire, or they don't know what devices should be protected. Is it a multi-function printer that has a hard drive inside the printer that they don't even realize that it's on the wire and it has sensitive data inside that printer? So it's hardware assets and software assets and licensing. Those are all 3 big areas of kind of what we call information management that companies should be aware of what they have on the wire so we can protect it from a security perspective. I think some of the silly things that we've seen, one of the questions you guys asked was, what are the weird or worst things that we've seen from a cyber perspective? One of the weird ones that we had, this access ability for, was at a bank, pretty large bank. I think they had 27 branches, and they had every user on the entire network was domain admins.
Oh, no.
It was great. I was like, I don't know if I could do that myself. I don't even know how to make that do that. So it took the IT folks, I was doing an assessment, and if we hadn't have done that assessment, we would have never caught this error in somebody. But the actual IT director had said, yes, we've been working on that for a couple of 6 months, and we can't figure out how everybody gets put back into domain admins as a group on the network. And I said, what was the reason why this was done back, 6 months ago? They had a new color printer and the CEO of the bank wanted to print to the color printer, and it wouldn't work unless this was done.
Donate him.
So that was the funnest one I saw. It literally took them, I was there working with them, doing an assessment, caught this snafu, and it took them a while. It took all of us a pretty good while to figure out how they were bypassing some of the craziness that was going on in the network. They got it settled. It's the claim to fame. All my buddies are all like, Paul, that's impossible. That can't happen. And I was like, it happens.
If it happens, it must be possible.
Yeah, it happened. I saw it. So that one wasn't costly yet to them, but they failed their assessment, their audit. They failed complete. Lack of control of everything. All the records, all the accounts for everybody had to be reviewed. Total everything failed from that one assessment. And it just proves that if you had periodic assessments of your network or general security, you can catch these little one-offs that could bring your company down and offline and out of business. So that's one of the ones. The other one was just a simple a failure of a device. The device was called a proxy server, which is like a firewall. It's an old style firewall that's not in use much anymore. This particular company had it in place and was working great for many, many years. Everybody thought it was working. And I showed up to just have a conversation with the CFO. And I said, so what's going on with your network here? I don't see a firewall between, from the outside looking in. And he goes, oh no, we got a great firewall. Off, no firewall. So the entire company open to the internet. And it had been that way for like months. So I think just general assessments. I had a couple of tools that I shared with you, Elaine, that were kind of fun. There's one that actually does, it's called GRC, that does it's called Shields Up, and it tests your firewall. So from the inside, it will actually test the connections that you're making outbound, and it tests back against you. It is a tool that looks a little dangerous. So if you're not familiar with it, it's okay. I'd be happy to help you. But it actually tests your firewall's capabilities to make sure you have all the ports closed, that you are in kind of a silent mode so people can't probe your network to try to come in. So that tool is, I can, actually, Sabrina, you could share that out later maybe.
I do, is that the Shields Up one?
Yep, grc.com.
Yes, I can do it right now.
And then the other tool that's out there that's kind of outdated, it's kind of a fun tool from the way back days of networking, but it is a tool called the MBSA.
Yeah, I know that.
And it's designed for Microsoft servers, laptops, workstations. It is outdated, meaning that it is kind of out of, they're not keeping up with it anymore. It still works, but it is pretty fun to see the things that it comes up with off of your machine. So patch levels, personal firewall enabled, accounts that are in use, services that are running, all of the good things that should be aware of from just an individualized PC basis, and something that we as a security company would actually do on a bigger scale, right? We would have tools that will give us this detailed information that we can report on to help better secure those endpoints, to make sure that those particular firewalls, antivirus, all the things that you need are in place and working on those endpoints. So that MBSA is just a fun little tool to kind of run and see what's on your machine. It'll also give you all the license information, and it's really about patches as well. So helping make sure that you have good patch levels on your machines. Everybody probably got that crazy Patch Tuesday. It happens all the time, screws up everybody's machine. I mean, me included, it hits everybody. And it's just one of those things that we have to deal with, but patching is very, very important. So that's one of the other top three, is that if you have a network or you're responsible for a network or you have a company that needs to be up and working, patches, keeping up with the patch levels on your machines and workstations, laptops, servers, and even some network devices that need to stay patched to the certain levels to provide robust security for your enterprise. So it's crazy that y'all are laughing. It's silly, but
No,
patches
right.
are pain. They're pain for everybody. So I know we do it. All of our endpoints are, monitored for those patch levels, and we hate it when it takes us offline, but it's very important.
Very good.
No, I was laughing, Paul, because some patches like Microsoft updates are almost like tests of your antivirus system. So
Yep. There are certain patches that you shouldn't apply, right? So if you have like Windows Media Player on your server and you're going to be listening to music on your server, that's not really required, right? So just there is a little bit of a mad scientist to applying patches, and it's not, don't trust Microsoft. I'm not saying to trust them wholeheartedly with all of the patches. I have clients and customers that have been taken offline because of applying a patch. So it's kind of, you have to do both. You should be aware of what you're applying, but you should apply as much as you can to meet your needs and to match your hardware and systems.
that's where you depend on your IT people.
I would love to get Joanne in this conversation because I love to get your perspective from coming from a big carrier that had all the bells and whistles with securities and, that was really like closed in on the protocol for the employees to now you have this opportunity to see all these agencies around the country that are submitting things to California and to reaching out to you guys. Have you seen any big differences there, any issues?
So I think the biggest issue is that I've seen is brokers not realizing that those third-party vendors that might have data are also very prone, and they are truly can be the source of a breach. So you can have everything built in on your end, and it can all kind of shift, and the tides may change all due to a third-party vendor relationship. So managing those relationships and ensuring that they have proper protocols in place seem to be key. I mean, that's been the biggest that I've seen. Kind of echoing Fred, at a company level, I have always been fortunate in having security in place that made me even aware of doing that at home, right? So I tend to be a little bit of a tech geek, and I actually found it challenging, or looked at the challenge of setting up a VPN, and I'm going back a number of years, where today VPNs at a personal level are much easier to put in place. There's a lot more availability. And again, you don't need to be an expert anymore. But in terms of really coming from a background where all of that security was constantly around, it makes you more aware at a personal level. So business-wise, I would tell you just, the third-party vendor, I think everyone today has spoken to all of the big issues. And to me, that third-party vendor is more what I've seen in my day-to-day.
Mm-hmm.
And I know we're running tight on time, but I would just really echo what Joanne said. I think, again, human factor is a critical one, but the third-party vendor issue in the world of insurance is something that should not in any way, shape, or form be overlooked or underestimated. The other point I would just want to buttress, Russ earlier talked about the fact that IT and all the security can be looked on as a cost and as a significant expense. It is, but in the world we live in the financial services world, especially in insurance, we're giving people a promise to pay, and your reputation is what's critical. That system that you put in place, the protections you put in place, to me are really an investment for the company and for your brand and for your reputation.
We did have one question that came in previously, but I just want to kind of circle back to it. Christy Dow had asked, so out in public, should you always have your Wi-Fi off?
Unless you have a VPN on.
Yep.
Yep. I see a lot of heads nodding. So
A wireless hotspot can be made to look just like your hotel's wireless, or if you're in the airport or wherever. You can't really trust them. You just can't. It's not worth it. So without a VPN, I don't hook up to anything.
So what do you think about these hotspots? A lot of our schools are opening up these hotspots. Do you think those are, set up with VPNs?
Yeah, I think the
Those
hotspots.
Wi-Fi's?
Then it says no.
I mean, whatever they're
That's
doing
kind of
isn't
scary.
working. Whatever they're doing isn't working. I was trying to look up some more recent claims, and frankly, just the last 2 to 3 months, nothing been school district, college, school district. And frankly, I think that hacking is going to be the new snow day. So again, just get a policy. I mean, and I think it was one of the Florida schools hacked was was caused by a 17-year-old. So it's like,
wow.
we're not going against, tenured people. If a 17-year-old can figure it out, they're probably smarter than your IT team at that point. Then just get a policy. Like, there's not really a great way to really prevent this. I mean, you can have a team like Russ, but at the end of the day, not everyone has the capability to have a team like Russ. And so it's just, even when that time fails, you got to make sure you have something to protect you at the end of it, which is a policy.
That's crazy. That's like something that's everyone's dealing with, right? Like children are taking classes in a different format, and now we have this vulnerability, this area that people hadn't even been thinking about. All they're trying to think about is, my kid going to school or is it not? And now it's like, oh wow, they can hack into my system and get my credit card information.
I say one thing I guess I would recommend then is for parents to get identity monitoring on their kids' social security numbers and private data, pretty much, because that's what I'm worried about. My niece is 14, my youngest niece is 2, and so I'm thinking about more so like 10 years in advance for them, of like, are they going to even have anything to identify themselves that isn't corrupted by someone else having stole it years prior before they even realize it? Because my niece loves TikTok, so I'm like, don't use that. Be careful what you're like, whether you're your house, whatever. It's just we don't know where that information isn't safe. It's just like going on Facebook Live essentially at that point where anyone can view it, and so it's anyone can do anything they want to with it at that point.
Wow, this has been another eye-opener. Thank you so much to all of you guys. It always feels like we can't even get through everything. Next week,
Part 4 of 3.
Never know. Next week, we are actually doing part 2 of pre-licensing exams and continuing education. So I'm looking forward to that. Then right after that, we're going to be doing a series on mergers and acquisitions. We know that there's a lot of M&A activity in the insurance space. So we're going to be covering some of the challenges and some of the solutions. So that's going to be a part 3 series. And then we are also going to be covering specialty licenses, TPA, MGA, RPGs, so we'll be doing that as well. So we have some really good sessions coming up.
Lots of heavy hitters.
And then we're going to be rounding it out with another part 3 series on actually staffing your compliance team. So that's going to be a 3-part series, and it's all about what you need to do to have a really good, robust compliance team. So thank you guys. Be safe. Remember, keep those Wi-Fi connections off when you go out.
Be safe.
Thank you. Be safe.
Bye. Thank you, guys.